Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I'm your host, Kashi Sehgal. And today we have a very special show. I know that we say that every week, but today we not only have an amazing speaker, but also it's my birthday. So this is our birthday show. And I have a great present for you guys, an amazing speaker. So let's kick things off. We do a segment every week, thanks to our partner, Steppingblocks. And today we are talking about marketing. So the category they have in their system, it's a huge data platform. It's got 100 million people worth of career data. And so it can really help you analyze what skills you want to go into, which schools, and really understand the industry that you might be interested in. So marketing. They talk about it as marketing and advertising, which are two very different things. And we can get into all of those things in another conversation, but they chunk it together. So let's talk about it. The most common degree is a bachelor's in marketing, which makes sense. There are 1.3 million people in the US working in marketing and advertising. It's a lot of people. It's obviously very popular these days, right? The average age of the industry is 37. So it's younger than a lot of the careers that we have been talking about the last couple of weeks. 54% female, 1% veteran. And the top skills are social media. That makes a lot of sense, right? We're all on social media. So social media marketing and advertising, and marketing strategy. So that's like the general marketing strategy, right? It could be data, it could be software, it could be anything. The skills that make the most, I know you guys are always interested in this data point. So the skills that actually make the most money from what it looks like is digital marketing or digital strategy, mobile marketing, and interactive marketing. And our guest today is really an expert at all of those things. So he's done some really cool stuff in those areas. So we're going to talk to him about that. Schools that people come from: Michigan State, NYU, Arizona State, Penn State. So a lot of people working in the industry these days are from those schools. So if you're from one of those schools, maybe you should think about it. All right. Without further ado, let us bring our guest on today, Doug Busk. Hello,
Hi.
welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm excellent. How are you?
Doing well. So everyone, we're very lucky. Doug has done a lot of things. So I'm going to introduce him, but I'm sure not going to get to everything he's done. We'll cover that. But so Doug right now is Vice President of Enterprise Communications and Marketing at Emory University, right here in Atlanta. It's an amazing university. He's also the former Managing Director for MSL Group, a huge agency, a global agency. And he was the former Global Group Director for Digital Communications and Social Media at Coca-Cola. So we're going to talk about a little bit of his background. But Doug, tell us where you went to school and what you majored in, and do you remember your graduation speaker and anything about school life?
Sure. Kashi, again, thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for dialing in. I do need to make an on-point reference right out of the gate. This is exciting, not only because it's your birthday, Kashi, but it is also, as of 3 minutes ago, the official relaunch of Emory.edu. So my team, the development team, the creative team at Emory, my hat off to them. We have a new website operational as of literally 3 minutes ago. So do on another tab, please pull up Emory.edu and let us know what you think of the design. So that's an example of the work I do. Asking me to remember graduating from Emory. Emory is also my alma mater. I graduated from Emory in 1996, which, yes, definitely dates me. Something to keep in mind, 96 was another presidential election year, as was 1992 when I started there. I was a political science major, so that makes sense, and learned under Alan Abramowitz, who you might know is one of the great professors still leading in political science, particularly political science forecasting, at Emory to this day, and also Merle Black and other sort of titans of political science when I was there. And I should point out that my wife, Cindy Zeldin, as well, is a graduate of Emory, although a couple of years later, and she followed it along with another degree there. So we're a bit of an Emory family. And that's one of the greatest elements of my job, is I get to combine passion for where I went to college and had some of the most formative, best years of my life, into the stories that my team tells every day on behalf of the school. So it's a neat unifying element of my job between my passion and my profession. As for remembering the speaker, no, I don't remember the speaker, but that's not unusual for my senior year. So we'll just leave it at that.
All right. No worries. Okay. So would you please walk us through your career journey, just high level? How did you go from Emory and political science to a career in marketing?
Yeah, it's at one point in my career, I flipped my my passion for my profession. I did take a straight shot at politics when I was still at Emory. I worked on the Max Cleland for Senate campaign. That was, I believe, the last successful Democratic U.S. Senate campaign in Georgia. He ran in 1996 and won. He was Secretary of State at the time. So I did, in fact, follow my major into politics, specifically media relations. So I was in the world of marketing and communications, which is where I've basically been in my career. But after that experience, I decided that what really interested me in media relations at the time and public relations was this growing space around the technology of it. How do people find stories? How do they connect with stories? And you have to keep in mind, this is the era of AOL. This was very early on in the digitization of media in general. But I spent a lot of time looking at that. I'd always been fascinated by computers, actually at the Emory Wheel, the school newspaper. I spent a lot of time in graphic design, self-teaching Quark Express and Adobe, the very young version of Adobe Illustrator around then. So I decided that what was more interesting than actually doing politics and media relations within it, but was looking at how technology will be the next great storytelling medium. So I started by working increasingly on high-tech clients when I was in public relations in San Francisco in '97. And then upon returning to Atlanta in '98, I got involved in online advertising. And after a few years building in that space, moved right into strategic product development in mobile, where I spent 15 years of my career again, building infrastructure for brands and advertisers, and eventually landed at one of those big brands at Coca-Cola. Just flipped to the other side of the path and product equation, if you will, and started working with the marketers at Coca-Cola and telling their stories through technology. And I was there for 7 years before agency, and then landing at Emory.
Cool. Well, okay. So there's lots to unpack there. Let's start with your current position. So you talked about storytelling and communicating what the Emory experience and what Emory is all about as a brand. How do you create a brand voice while you're messaging to multiple stakeholders? So there's students, alumni, faculty, staff, the community. How do you talk about who you are while basically having one platform in which to get all of that out? I mean, there's social media, there's a newsletter, but how do you do that?
Sure. Emory is in many ways a house of brands, as opposed to a branded house. And what that means is there are really dozens of silos of storytelling throughout the university. Just in the last week, we've had several announcements, for example, around vaccine, some of the work the university and its researchers are doing on the Moderna vaccine specifically for COVID-19. as well as a series of panels still dissecting the impact of the 2020 elections and specifically what it means to be a swing state in Georgia. So you're not going to hit every stakeholder with every story. The reality is clarity helps you cut through. And if a story is not, if a story is shared, you cared. So we focus on what makes the most compelling story first and foremost, and then think about the best way to get that story in front of audiences who might care about it and share it. The university, in a basic form, has several buckets of audiences. You have applicants, which varies from undergraduate to graduate, more professional degrees. You have students, which is an audience deserving of its own attention while you're actively a student at the university. You have parents of students, a particularly important audience when you're looking at the undergraduate universe. And then you have alumni, donors. On the healthcare side, some of those donors are what we call grateful patients. People had a positive experience with Emory Healthcare and have chosen to give back so that others may receive that level of care. You have grant makers who supply the tens of millions of dollars of grants, some of which are going towards vaccines like the COVID-19 vaccine I mentioned. And then you have stakeholders. We want to make sure that the people of Atlanta, the people of Georgia, the civic leaders, but also our neighbors in and around Druid Hills and the entire city and state know who we are and what we do. So first we focus on, is this a story you would care to read? Content has to be king, or it won't cut through and it won't be shared. And we sort out which audience is best interested and then try to find that audience by delivering to where they live digitally rather than demanding that they always come to us. I am very proud of the new look of emory.edu, but I am totally okay if you find the story on Facebook, Twitter, or Insta, whatever your favorite path might be.
That's great. Yeah, that you listed so many more stakeholders than I even thought of. So yeah, so brand voice people, it's about authentic messaging, right? And then how that trickles through.
And it's really about the humans at the center of the story. I think one of the challenges that really all higher education faces is there's a sense of, by some, of relatability. They may know the university that is nearby. They may know of Georgia Tech. They may know of Georgia State. They may know of Emory, just to look at Atlanta. But they don't necessarily know or understand the work that goes on there. So a lot of what my team endeavors to do is to find the humans that are impacted, the human impact at the center of the story, whether that's a student or a patient or somebody who's volunteered to trial out one of these new vaccines that are being tested at Emory. What is their story? Because at the end of the day, that gets at the authenticity you mentioned and has the greatest chance of gaining momentum, particularly in social.
Sure. Okay, so let's transition. You mentioned social. So your role at Coke. So you built the global hub at Coke. Can you tell us, first of all, what is that? I think the students would love to know what it is.
Sure.
And then how do you go about building a global organization? What skills do you think were the most important in making it a reality? And like, where did the idea for the hub even come from? I know those were a lot of questions, but
no. Well, there's a common DNA for the hub, and frankly, a lot of the roles that I've been attracted to and lucky enough to be invited to take on in my career, and that is building bridges between people's favorite brands and where they live, as I said, digitally, whether that's mobile or social or otherwise. The hub and the hub network had as its genesis understanding the connection people have with Coca-Cola and its world of products, whether they buy them or not, just understanding what the company is about. And as I said earlier, what motivates the company? What motivates the company to come up with better products, but what motivates the company also to pay attention to sustainability, to product sourcing, to recycling, to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in 2012, not coincidentally, another election year, you'll see that as a theme in my career. I was challenged by my boss's boss at the time, Wendy Clark, who's now the CEO of a major global ad agency. Wendy had learned a little bit of what the Obama reelection campaign was up to with data. They had already gathered at that point a team of over 100 data scientists that were considering what's happening with social media and really its embryonic form compared to where it went in 16 and where it is today. But we're using that data to get a sense of who was a fan of the president and maybe hadn't voted for him in 08, and trying to find other voters like that to get them activated and involved. And she challenged me to say, well, where does that apply at Coke? And I had been working on building out these mobile bridges with our consumers, location-based services, mobile payment, tap and pay, loyalty. And I said, well, that stitching and that driver that you have in politics is very different for us at Coca-Cola. She said, well, what's similar? And I said, well, how many drinks do you want to buy me and how many free hours do you have? And she took me up on it, and we created a task force that interviewed stakeholders around the Coca-Cola system, as they call it, not simply inside the company, but also retailers, convenience store owners in Manila, major grocery chain owners and operators like Tesco in Great Britain, other partners around the system and in the community. What did they see, hear, talk about the company and social media? And out of that, built a set of platform proposals that spanned the entire cycle of digital dialogue around the company. First, you have to listen to what people are saying about the company and its brands. You then have to understand it, which is a layer of analytics. And it wasn't quite at the point of AI at that stage, but just simple analytics as to what is the sentiment, what is the volume and velocity of those conversations around the company. You then have to determine, based on that, whether or not you should engage. Frankly, there are plenty of conversations that brands should be aware of, but only be aware of, not necessarily engage in. And then for those that you engage in, how did it go? Which starts the cycle again with listening and analytics. One of the biggest pieces that was missing, and is missing in companies big and small, and we face this challenge at Emory as well, is getting to shared benchmarks. You have to have an understanding of the metrics that matter. These aren't 5, 10, or 20. These are typically 2 or 3 metrics. And that understanding has to be across the enterprise. So at the time, you could go from country to country and even brand to brand. And the Fanta brand manager didn't use the same definition of success in social media that the Sprite brand manager did. And they both sat in the same office in Brazil. So I think one of the greatest successes of the Hub Network team was that we were able to bring apples to apples metrics across the globe and give the company a shared sense of success. So that's one of the first areas I look at when I take on a new role.
Yeah, standardization and benchmarking, that's such a big deal. Quick follow-up to that. So if you were starting that role today, would the technology that we have created over the last 10 or so years that have really gotten big in the last 10 years, AI, the whole sentiment analysis that you can do automatically now, would those tools have been really helpful to you guys, or do you think it would have hindered you in any way?
I like to focus on actionable intelligence. I don't, aside from considering privacy, which is something you have to have top of mind particularly when you're looking at social media.
Yeah.
And that's simply table stakes. But the data that you're getting, is it actionable to drive business decision making? Doesn't matter whether it's AI that might have generated that output, or a consulting team, or a team of research students in the business school. If that intelligence isn't something that allows me as a marketer or communicator to make a decision, doesn't have to be a decision today, but to make some sort of business-driven decision, then you have to question the usefulness of that data. We are swimming in a sea of reports and data points that only confuse and frankly drown decision making. So that's why I try to come back to metrics that matter constantly. Because you'll find that it's really 2 or 3 metrics that drive most enterprises, that drive most businesses. And if you can draw a direct line between sentiment of a conversation or interest in a particular social media post or conversion from that social media post, certainly into a purchase, that's a business decision driver. So I work very hard to try to sift for that, but it is very much like sifting for gold because there's so much data out there today.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's move right along to your time with the Obama campaign. So you thought up and basically built the mobile strategy that the Obama campaign used. It became a blueprint for other successful campaigns, and it was really used for mobile engagement and fundraising. So could you talk a little bit about how you thought up this brand new way of doing things that nobody else was doing? And you've mentioned this in previous answers, but talk to us a little bit about linking your skills with your passions and how you don't have to go into a traditional role. You can do something you really care about.
Sure. The best moments in my career have sat at the intersection between my passion and my profession. And the work that we were able to do for the Obama 2008 campaign is one of my top examples because it marked the return for me personally to politics and an application at the time of nearly 10 years of knowledge of online advertising and marketing and mobile marketing. I was invited to effectively pitch what was 5-6 people in what I like to think is an unmarked office inside the Loop in Chicago late in 2006 on using mobile as a means to power this guy, Senator Obama's presidential campaign. And I will point out that yes, I did definitely check the index of the book when I got it. I got this from another Emory alumni and fraternity brother of mine. Thank you, Mark. I did check in the back, and I didn't make the cut on this one, but I'm not offended. The president has a lot to talk about in this.
We'll log that as feedback for him.
Yeah, I fully expect that voicemail. Doug, let's be honest.
President Obama totally watches this show, okay? I just want to make that very clear.
Look, you're going to be featured in the second book. We'll talk more about mobile in that one. This is only the first 800 pages, so give me a break.
Love it.
So I was invited by what was really the embryonic version of the campaign at that point. Many people went on to big careers in politics, including Joe Rospars and really the guy who became my partner in crime inside the campaign, Scott Goodstein, to make a pitch for what mobile could do. And essentially, and I still have this 8-slide PowerPoint deck. The pitch was your primary competition, and no pun intended, will be at the time Senator Clinton. And she has most of the infrastructure of the Democratic Party locked down. One of your areas of support that's waiting to hear from you, however, is college students. And college students, even then, and this is at the time of triple tapping text messages, which I know a lot of people watching will probably have to Google that. That was a nightmarish process of texting via triple tapping on a traditional flip phone. So pull up an episode of Better Call Saul to see what that was like. And it was a means of getting at college students because they're away from home, they're not an easy group to find, and they're waiting to be activated by what I felt was obviously going to be a great campaign of hope and change, as it turned out. And the campaign took me up on it. And I was assigned to work with Scott, and Scott and I worked every day pretty much from there to the general election, and launched ringtones that were featured on The Daily Show, which was another real highlight. We launched text coupons so you could pick up merch at a discount from the campaign website. But most importantly, reminders to register, reminders to vote, easy means to get a car, someone to come by and pick you up and bring you to the polling location if you had a tough time on election day. And on election night, I was sitting there looking at the really close states, and I had a list of all of the phone numbers, the cell numbers, the followers and fans we had in that state. And when Indiana turned, which is a very tough state traditionally for a Democrat, turned for Obama, I think the margin was something around 18,000. It was razor thin, not dissimilar actually Georgia's margin in the 2020 election, it looks like. And we had over 55,000 on the mobile list. And that was one of the greatest moments of my career. I felt like the work we had done may have changed that state and made that happen. Yeah. Never made a dime. I was what they call a strategic outside advisor, which if a campaign asks you to be that, no, that does not come with a paycheck or benefits. But I couldn't have been prouder with what we did. And out of that, I formed an agency called Revolution Messaging with Scott Goodstein and Keegan Gudis and others. And we went on to power the Sanders campaign digital side in 16. So that was another amazing chapter in my career. But it was really honored to be a part of it and help him become president in my own small way.
Wow. That is all so cool. Everything from text coupons to like thank yous and reminders. I mean, you guys really spanned the whole gamut of the kinds of ways you can use mobile to engage.
Well, and I do have to say, it came with its fun moments. There, occasionally, the campaign would give me a shout and say, "Okay, we're getting some weird feedback over the over the text messaging channel when a response didn't fit into a particular keyword. It would go into a bucket, and they would send me the list of responses. And keep in mind, this is 2007, 2008. It's pretty intimate connection that people had, and they would let then Senator Obama know it. So you get messages in there that were very personalized to whatever the experience of that voter was. And very personalized to the senator, and many of them just innocent and wonderful. Things like, I've never had a connection like this with a campaign. We would try to answer every random question that came in under 140 characters or less, which is what you had in text messaging at the time. So it was really an incredible thing to be a part of it. I'm still honored to have been a part of it.
Yeah, so cool. Such a cool experience. Okay, I have one more question, and then we've got student questions coming in. What role do you think marketers play today, and what's their responsibility? And how has it changed in the last 20 years?
Wow.
You got 1 minute, go.
it's changed markedly in the last 10 years, but I'll take in the last 20 years. Today's marketer really has to be somebody who has one foot in the world of the art of their work and the science of their work. They're inextricably linked. Never have marketers been expected to be lifelong learners more than they are now. So when I have my down days, I try to go onto YouTube and find somebody who I admire and follow and learn more about what they're doing in marketing. Because the speed and velocity of change in marketing is intense. So it's incumbent on all of us, number one, to be lifelong learners, and number two, to increasingly think about the ethical impacts of the work we're doing. This is an area where the AI, the algorithms are, I think, getting ahead of us collectively. So with that learning comes a responsibility of asking about whether a particular technique is the right technique, or what is the best, most correct, most ethical way to achieve business goals. I don't have time in the minute to talk about, what that means in the way of really questioning metrics you get from, the platforms. But suffice it to say, I think that's the future for all of us as marketers, no matter what our age is or what stage we're in our careers, is to be lifelong learners and to keep a close eye on, the ethical implications of our work.
I love that answer so much. And that's like a whole nother show we could just do on the ethics of marketing. We'll get there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe we'll revisit that in the new year. Okay, so student questions are coming in. Let's do a few of those. These are very marketing specific. Okay. Erica would like to know, what are the brands that are doing a good job? I assume with social or
just doing a good job.
Yeah.
That's it is a fascinating time to watch what brands are doing. We've seen exponential growth in home delivery and mobile commerce. And so one of the spaces I look at for answering that question, which brands are doing good, is retail right now. The obvious places to look for pure success, doing good based on volume, are players like Amazon. I find it a lot more interesting to look at smaller chains, individually owned mom and pops, if you will, and grocery stores, and what's happening inside of grocery stores. The path to purchase has been radically altered, I think, in ways that will probably stick with us. The reality is that the need for social distancing and the need for masking is going to continue on for probably another 6 months at minimum, give or take. According to most of the researchers that we work with, that's a minimum amount of time that we'll need to stay safe. And during that time, we're all shopping differently, primarily for food. So when folks are going into a Kroger or a Safeway or another grocery store, and they're not seeing their brand of sugar, or they're not seeing their brand of pasta, are they picking up the store brand? Are they picking up another brand? And how many times does it take for them to pick that up to go, actually, it's pretty good? So if you look into the earnings reports of players like Target and Walmart, which were both announced this week, with stratospheric home delivery, but also very strong curbside growth and very strong in-store growth, start peeling back the layers and really look at what's happening there and how that's impacting different brands. And I would also look at how retailers and other segments are treating their workers in this environment. The reality is that the cashier, the stocker, the person bagging your groceries, they are frontline workers. And I tend to look at how well they're being treated by their employers during this time, because we need them to continue to be there and continue to stay healthy. So that's another way of answering the do good question, and in my opinion, the more important side of that coin.
Yeah, totally. Okay, changing it up a bit. Greg wants to know, what's the worst job you've ever had? Did you know going into it that you wouldn't like it? And if yes, why'd you take it?
The worst job I ever had. Well, as most recruiters will tell you, I'm a bit of a job hopper. So if I'm in a bad job, I'm probably not there for long. I will tell you how I landed in the bad jobs. I didn't think long enough about what I call my big five. I find that there are 5 filters that you have in life, and this is something you have to update as you move along in your life and your career. And those 5 filters should be a mix of your personal and your professional goals. And when you get a call for a job opportunity, or you're looking at an opportunity on LinkedIn or elsewhere, you have to match them against your 5 filters and be religious about that. That can be things like salary, title, visibility. I found, as I've gotten older and started a family with my wife, a lot of my personal priorities started moving up to being numbers 1, 2, and 3. For example, for Emory, one of my big 5 was commute. I'm lucky in that Emory is 12 minutes away with traffic. Now it's 0 minutes away, given what's happening. But that was a priority. It was one of my big 5. So I can tell you I landed in those jobs because I either didn't know about the Big Five at the time, or I didn't have an honest enough conversation with myself about them before I took the opportunity. Specifically, the worst job was a temp job, which was data entry. Lost my mind. Probably not a good gig for a dyslexic, by the way. Not very good at data entry right out of the gate. The funniest job I had was assistant manager of the Riverside Yacht Club snack bar in my hometown. That was the most fun. That was my first management position, strictly speaking. Working the flat grill in 100-degree weather without air conditioning.
Yeah.
And again, the most fun I've had and the most learning I've had are the jobs I've really not thought about the money at all. And again, I point to the Obama campaign, but also creating donate by text while I was at Verizon, and entirely charitable for charitable purposes. Wasn't one of my goals at all. Seeing my team go on a road trip called Journey by Journey, where we went across the country in a caravan and met Coca-Cola's top fans, people who have museums that they've made in their basements of Coca-Cola paraphernalia, connecting with bottlers like East Tennessee Bottling Company that frankly didn't get the attention they deserve from headquarters. So taking the show on the road and learning the stories from there. Again, none of these, frankly, made any money per se directly, but are moments where I'm proudest of connecting with our fans.
Yeah. Getting an opportunity to listen, right? And hear others tell their story.
In person, yeah.
In person, yeah. Okay, so Kate would like, okay, this is more of a career-oriented question. What do I say to employers who say I need experience to apply? How do I get experience if no one will hire me? And she says, we are supposed to keep our profiles, I would imagine she's talking about social profiles, private while job searching, but I don't have any other content to present for an interview. So
sure. Well, if it's any consolation, that's a question that will continue to come back around in your career. You know, facing me might be, how do I become a chief communications officer when I haven't been a chief communications officer? So it's something that you'll refine as you go through your career. In direct answer to your question, I think most employers will appreciate application of your work no matter how it was created. There are internships are the most obvious answer. But do you have a story you wrote for your school newspaper that proves you can write well? Did you present at some point in a business class and that shows off your chops potentially with PowerPoint or building a business case? Did you have a summer job that applies, that proves your dedication or your sense of innovation? So in my view, as a hiring manager, I'm much more interested in how the story of your life applies than how you gain that story. So it does take a little bit of creativity, but it takes sort of flipping your life experience, if you will, upside down and looking for that from your life that applies to the job rather than strictly looking at the job requirements. And by the way, when those are written up, the 5 to 7 years in X job, I always get a laugh out of that because I might be working with a recruiter and he or she says, well, you're looking for a social media person and clearly they need 10 years of experience. And I'm like, well, no, because that would mean we're finding somebody who had experience with Friendster and CompuServe. That's not who I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who knows their way around social media in the time it existed. So don't get too hung up on the exact requirements. Try to find experiences from your life that apply no matter where they came from.
Totally. I would also add to that and just say, you can also turn your application into an example of your work, right? Like get creative, make a presentation, like write up some tweets that you might send to the brand or whoever it is you're trying to apply for or with. I don't know, like get creative. I mean, I think people always appreciate something different. So at least it'll make you stand out.
Yeah, and there's a number of templates out there that can help you. One that was very common at Coca-Cola when I was there is what's called the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result. So what is the situation you were facing? What are the tasks you lined up? What are the actions you took? And what was the result? That, by the way, could have been a fundraiser you helped lead at school. What was the situation, the task, the action, the result? It's a way of coming up with a model that explains to an employer exactly how that experience applies.
Wow, that is great advice. Y'all look that up, okay? Tangible advice. Okay, a few more. Ronald is asking, isn't social media a full-time job with having to respond to customers? Do you ever get to sleep?
Well, thanks to some of the fine products from my former employer. Yes, social media is absolutely a full-time job. And what you're speaking to is community management is a subset that responds to customers or consumers. And that's why I'm lucky to have 3-4 people on my team that do social media exclusively. It is also increasingly a necessity for marketers. As I mentioned, a foot in art and a foot in science. You really can't be a modern communicator or a marketer if you don't understand at least the basics of social media today. Just this week, I was a little annoyed because I don't like the UX, but I was, finding my way around fleets, which are Twitter's version of Insta stories. And I find it a little invasive because I think that should actually sit in Insta, not in Twitter. But that just goes to show you have to be a nonstop learner in this space. If you're looking at social media as a career, one of the things that you will want to look at is, do you really enjoy talking to people all the time? Personally on Twitter, on Insta, on Facebook, whatever your platform of choice is. If you don't, you're probably not going to enjoy talking to customers or consumers all the time. There are analytics side of social media, there's conversion and purchasing sides of social media, and there's paid media sides of social media. So really take a look at how you like to engage with social, and that might help guide you for what you would do specifically within social media. But yeah, it's absolutely a career in its own right, or it can be a capability, an asset that you take into being a more generalist marketer or communicator. By the way, the line between marketing and communications is part of the reason I have both of those titles, gets grayer by the day.
Sure, yeah. Here, I figured we would get a question on this platform. Susan wants to know, what do you think of TikTok? And how does a company use it effectively?
TikTok. I'll start with the pros and then some of the questions I have about it. On the pro side of the ledger, I think it is an incredible home of creativity right now. There's clearly a zeitgeist that TikTok is zeroed in on, the overlay of music with experience that is really powerful for storytelling. Just the most recent meme that I'm aware of anyway, the ocean spray example is just incredible. The way that it cuts through, there's an authenticity and a humanity. But if you also look at what happened with President Trump's Tulsa rally and TikTok users using TikTok as a way to rally and basically get ghost tickets, so it looked like the arena was full when that actually wasn't the ticket sales that were happening. So I think as a creative community, it's absolutely amazing. On the question side of the ledger, I would say TikTok is owned, as many of you know, by ByteDance. ByteDance is a China-based company that is novel for us as Americans. We've been accustomed to platforms that, by and large, are based and owned in the United States. You can research lots of takes on this, so I don't need to dive into that too much, but I don't think you can ignore TikTok as a community. And I also don't think you can ignore what its very existence says about it. The fact that TikTok is around, and Snap continues to do very well, and Insta continues to do very well, is part of that lifelong learning I mentioned. There will be another TikTok and another vehicle after that. I would also look very closely at what Apple is doing around augmented reality. And my take on that is that Apple is going to get there by nailing sound first, which is a very interesting way to get at AR. Because there's a layer of believability that you're missing in a lot of augmented and virtual reality that is really dependent on sound. And and I'm not the only one in thinking this, and others have pointed out, is watch what Apple is doing in sound to really figure out where it's going in AR. I think augmented reality is the next big layer to social media, and obviously Zuckerberg and Facebook and Oculus are already down that path as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's Apple kind of returning to its like rebrand roots when it started with the iPod and sound, and kind of remade itself as a company around the iPod. Like sound is going to take it to the next level again.
Exactly. That's why I crack up when people say, oh, well, podcasting is big now. I'm like, do you know that that's because it was originally on the iPod?
That's
to remind people of that. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, we're like so running out of time, but there are a few more questions. Jasmine wants to know, how do you tell a story via tweet or through an image? And how do you write a post that really convinces a consumer to buy?
So this is a good one for a speed round. I'll see if I can do that quickly. Number one, when you're creating any content, you want to think about what expresses best for the story you're telling and the environment in which you're telling it. LinkedIn has a different sort of editorial mindset than does Twitter, than does Insta, than does YouTube. So first, you want to think about the story you're telling, and if you have the choice, given your intended audience, tell it the best possible way for that audience and for that platform. I was looking at my own analytics just earlier today. It's not like I hit refresh on that all the time, but I am in the business. So I was on LinkedIn looking at some recent posts I have, and we featured an alumna at Emory who created this really instantly iconic image of Vice President-elect Harris and Ruby Bridges. And it's just an incredible image that's really taken off. And I did a little bit of a test with that post. Short intro text, iconic image that draws people in, semi-provocative or semi-controversial area, given that it has a political overtone, although it's really a story of this Emory alumna, and watched as the impressions went through the roof. Short text, neat subject matter, graphic. That happens to be what does best in LinkedIn today, as an example. So you'll want to frame that up for whatever content you're doing ahead of time. What was the second part of the question? Oh, how do you get to sales? You got to have the fastest route to one-click purchasing and watch the entire flow from the story to the store. So if you're going to do a YouTube video, can they click through the video? Can they click from the tag? Can they click from the body text? How hard is it for them to find how to purchase? And when they get there, how hard is it to purchase? These days, I think Shopify is one of the most compelling commerce tools out there because it's really taken the Amazon model and made it freely available in almost a MailChimp style way to just about anybody who has a storefront. So how you go from the story to the store, make sure that you're finding your audience first for the story, and the store is as few clicks as possible.
Yeah, that's great feedback. That's true also, not just for marketing, but for literally everything. If you want a call to action, make sure it's easy to get to.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question. What's the difference? This is from Cassidy. What is the difference between working for a brand and working with an agency?
And I think by that, Cassidy, you mean working in a brand or working in an agency. Being in-house at a brand does give you clarity of purpose. You have one brand you're working for and the paycheck is pretty steady. Agency is your natural home if you can't decide what you like in a day. Agency life is filled with a million challenges. Some of the most brilliant, albeit manic marketers I know just can't get out, can't escape agency because they've become, in a good way, addicted to the speed and the urgency and the pressure. And if you're good at it, it is frankly a means to get at a much more lucrative career than a lot of in-house brand jobs. But what you get in-house is that clarity of purpose, the ability to plan out over a little bit longer time without, frankly, the fear of where's the next contract or how do I get to the next billable hour. If you thrive on pressure and you want to learn as quickly as possible, agency is a great place to do it. That's why I advise a lot of folks who are at the start of their careers, if they don't mind the pressure, to go to agency because they'll learn a lot in a very short amount of time. And then after that, they can take those skills to brand. But that's the two sort of big buckets of considerations between the two for me.
Cool. That was great advice. So y'all look at some agencies. We've got some great ones here in Atlanta. All right, Doug, thank you so much. We are definitely out of time. We've gone way over, but we appreciate you taking a few extra minutes with us. Everyone, you can find us on the web at our website, supernovacommemcements.com, on all the social handles. Please like, comment, ask questions. We want to know what you're up to. And remember, sign up for the mailing list because we've got exciting things coming your way. Scholarships, grants, internships, all the fun things. So get connected to us. Next week is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving in advance. We will not have a show because holiday week. But the following week after Thanksgiving, we will be right back here. We've got Scott Sanchez, who was the past Chief Innovation Officer at Nationwide. He also was the VP of Innovation at First Data before that. So we're going to talk innovation. It's going to be cool. Doug, do you have any parting words for our students?
I think what I'd advise you to do, and I wish somebody had told me, when I was at the start of my career, is do think about how your passion meets your profession, and somewhere at that intersection will be the next great job.
Great. Awesome advice. Students, have a great week. It's a unique time. Make the most of it. And remember, it's a blessing to be a blessing. So be kind to people today as you go throughout your week, through the holiday. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye.
Thanks, Kashi. Thanks, everybody.